Meantime, we do want to bring in our friend at the Heritage Foundation, Brent Sadler, who knows a thing or two about this region of the world. He joins me. Brent, good to see you here. I know you've been following this extremely closely. There is a Groundhog Day feel to this. It seems like each and every day we are waiting to see what Iran will do. Will they do it or won't they? Brent, what say you?
Well, this is, I guess, largely by design. This kind of anticipation is what the regime in Tehran has even said. They've explicitly said part of the payback is in this anticipation. There's several thoughts out there. Again, the nature of the assassination of Haniyeh in IRGC guest house in Tehran after the inauguration of Iran's new president is a significant, loss of face, but not the same thing as the attack in April 1st, where Israel killed several senior IRGC Iranian generals that are key in supporting and supplying intelligence to their proxies, in that case, Hezbollah. So it's a little different in the nature of what happened recently with the killing of Hamas's leader versus the response, the mass missile attack that Iran launched in response to that earlier Damascus attack where Iranians were killed. In this case, and what we're seeing and waiting for is a response that didn't involve any Iranians.
You know, Brent, I thought the president said something today that was quite interesting. He made the direct link to the ceasefire deal negotiations that are going to be happening later this week to what Iran might do. He said this, that if a ceasefire deal is reached, Iran will hold off. He said that's his expectation. Is that your expectation?
Well, that's what Tehran is saying right now, I think, in an effort to try to walk back their threats. Again, the missile attack that they launched on April 13th was, largely ineffective and basically demonstrated the impotence of Iran's conventional weaponry. And so a repeat of that actually has a lot of risk for the Iranian regime. So I think they're looking for any excuse to avoid having to do that again and be embarrassed. So I think, yes, if a deal is made, they'll seize on that as an excuse for not amassed retribution against Israel.
Okay, let's talk about the deal right now. I guess there really isn't much of a deal on the table at this point. It has changed in so many forms and iterations. Hamas isn't even going to be at the table this round. Secretary of State Blinken is postponing his trip to the Middle East. He was supposed to leave today. How does that bode for the overall sense of negotiations? Biden said today on the tarmac that this is very hard, but he's still confident. He's still optimistic about it. Is there any sense of optimism left in this, or is it a fool's errand at this point?
My assessment is a fool's errand, quite frankly, because the two parties that are involved in this that are key to any negotiation is Israel and Hamas, and neither of them have had any indication that a deal is in the offing that both would agree to. Hamas has been basically less than an honest broker in these negotiations. And I don't see that changing even with the assassination of their former leader, Haniyeh, because really, Sinawar, the guy who's hiding out in the caves or the bunkers in Gaza, has really been the guy calling the shots. And he is of no mind or illusion to sign a deal with the Israelis, which would be effectively his death warrant.
But, Bren, I mean, 3 of Hamas's top leaders just in the last month and a half have been neutralized, taken out. They're dead. You mean to tell me that Hamas still has leverage after that?
No, I don't think they have any leverage. The only thing that they have is the anticipation that they have hostages that are still alive, and that is really their lifeline. And I think as a matter of time, Israeli forces continue to the stranglehold on them. And once they find Sinawar, I think things will very rapidly come to a conclusion with the defeat of Hamas.
Okay, so could it be, though, that because of these targetings and killings and assassinations of Hamas's top political leadership, that they don't have anyone to come to the table, or they haven't tapped the next person to come to the table for these latest rounds of ceasefire talks, or not? Is that not possible?
It's an attempt, quite frankly, to try to force the Israelis into a ceasefire to allow Sinawar to engage in negotiations. Again, that's an effective ceasefire. There is a negotiator already. There was the second that's been leading the negotiations in Qatar, who is working for Haniyeh, who's there still able to negotiate on behalf of Sinawar. But it's a play to try to corner the Israelis into a ceasefire that gives Hamas breathing space and perhaps room to continue to live on, when really, after the nature of the attacks of October 7th, Israel has stated, and I think rightfully so, that the goal is the destruction of Hamas and nothing less.
Brent, one more headline here we want to get to with you. The U.S. approving $20 billion in arms sales to Israel today, including scores of fighter jets and advanced air-to-air missiles at the approval of Secretary of State Blinken. Question for you, actually, two. Why is Blinken the one approving this? And is this going to be immediately used by the IDF right now, or are these long-term commitments and guarantees for Israel's security? Are they going to see any of this anytime soon, any of this hardware?
So institutionally, as State Department decides, is the final signature. The Secretary of Defense has some input into this decision as to the sensitivity of the weapon systems. But again, Israel being a longtime ally, that's largely fairly pro forma at this stage, unless there's some really niche or very advanced capabilities we're talking about. That's not in this case. So State Department is the one that would sign off on this deal in the end, of course, with the president's blessing. And the other point is any of these weapon systems that Israel's buying, they're not going to show up for quite some time.
You know, Brent, before we leave here, what's your sense, what's your feeling of this very restive part of the world there in the Middle East? Of course, it's a presidential election here stateside, and Benjamin Netanyahu just spoke to Congress not too long ago. What's your pulse going forward just this week? You have the immediacy of the short term and the long term as well. We didn't even get into what Hezbollah might do. I mean, could you see a scenario in which Iran just uses Hezbollah to launch this attack?
No, I think that's what we're probably going to see. We already saw fairly sizable mass attack in the last 24 hours, about 30 or so missiles from Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has been egging on Iran to back them and to also conduct another mass missile attack, because Hezbollah has also had its leaders taken off the field. It's number 2 and the senior military advisor to Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah. So there's a lot of pressure on Iran to act. And I think Iran could very easily have some plausible deniability by allowing them to go their own way. But I think at the end of the day, Hezbollah is not going to do that if they don't have Iran continuing to resupply them with missiles and weaponry after they've conducted such a strike. The other piece of this is Russia. Several days after Haniyeh's assassination, Shoigu went on behalf of Putin to Tehran to basically encourage the leadership there to show restraint. Russia relies on Iran's missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones as it wages a war in Ukraine. And we've seen in the last week that Ukraine has now launched an offensive into the Kursk region. So all these things are connected to include activity in Beijing.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm keeping going here. We're going a little long, but I'm getting a lot of questions from viewers and family and friends. When President Biden says, when asked, what is your message to Iran, and he simply replies, don't, that's a deterrent word, of course. But has deterrence failed? Iran already did this in April for the very first time in Israel's history, directly attacking it. They're poised to do it a second time again. That's unprecedented here. So is Iran deterred or not? I mean, you would think after the first go-round, when 99% of their ballistic missiles were intercepted, they didn't have much luck there. No one was killed in Israel, minor injuries for some, minor damage as well. Why would they do it again?
Well, the easiest thing is that this administration has not imposed any cost. And so if Iran needs to go through the symbolic gesture of launching a lot of missiles at great expense and also great risk to human life in Israel and to Americans, they'll do it. There's no cost that's on the other end of that, because this administration is playing a defensive game where they feel that they'll take the hit, and as long as they can take it, they'll just continue to power on through with the failed policies that they've been pursuing for the last 3.5 years or so.
Okay,
so deterrence has escaped these guys.
Okay, just lastly, though, I'm going to ask the same question Fox's Lucas Tomlinson asked Major General Pat Ryder at the Pentagon today. Is there a scenario in which the U.S. would directly engage Iran in response to whatever Iran might do? Do you foresee a scenario like that or no?
The only scenario that I see, and it would be very narrowly focused, is if Iranian units, the IRGC, or even their normal military units, actually attacked U.S. forces. In that case, I could see a U.S. response, and it would be within the rules of engagement of self-defense, even. So, and I think those are probably already set into motion as we speak. Iran knows this. We have a long history in the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz. So I don't think that they're going to do that. They're going to try and use their proxies, and they're going to try and embarrass us or try and get a shot in, which to Israel underneath our nose and our missile defense to show that our defenses are not as effective as we say they are, or demonstrated in April.
All right, Brent Sadler, as always, thanks so much for a lively, insightful conversation. We'll talk soon.
Thank you very much.